everybody, and welcome to another IELTS Learning Tips video. Bernie Wall here. If you haven't seen me before, then I'm an IELTS trainer and teacher. I've been working with IELTS students for about 25 years, most of it at band 7 and 8. And I've been working online with IELTS students for over 10 years now, helping them to get their high bands in IELTS. And we seem to have another number 7. So last week I talked about 7 things you can do to make sure you get the high bands. And this week I'm going to talk about writing, and I'm going to give you 7 pointers. 7 is actually my lucky number. So I'm going to give you 7 pointers to improve your writing. And writing is the one thing that I think most students, not all, but most students are challenged by a little. And it tends to be the one area of IELTS which takes the longest to improve and to get to a high band, which is not surprising, because if you go to school, if you cast your mind back to when you went to school, when you arrived at school on that first day, when you were 5, say, you'd be able to speak reasonably fluently, you can listen quite well, you first start to learn to read, and that takes up the first part, and then you start to learn to write. And the level of writing that you're asked to do in IELTS is probably the level of writing that a 17, 18-year-old would be doing in a native speaker situation, in a high school. So it does take quite a long time to get to that level. And although you have a base in your own language, obviously writing differs quite a bit from language to language. So that's why it takes time. So you need to be, number 1, patient and really work at it. And number 2, keep practicing, because it does go through different steps. I find firstly, the grammar will improve, then the vocabulary will improve, and then usually in the last stages I'm working a lot on good cohesion and a good flow. So you have to go through those stages. You can't really run before you can walk. So here are some ideas about how you can improve your writing, and there are 7 things that I feel you should do in order to get to your band 7. So here are 7 top tips, and the key thing is that it takes time, so don't rush it. So less is more. What do I mean by that? I know you need complex sentences, but that doesn't mean your complex sentences have to be very long. So it has to be under control. And I find quite often with students, they see a complex sentence as taking 3 sentences, adding a few linking words, and then making them into one long sentence. And what often happens here is that you lose control of the sentence and the meaning gets lost somewhere in the middle. There's a big danger of cohesion errors as well as grammatical errors. So I always say to my students, if your sentence is going for more than 3 lines or even into 3 lines, go back and check it carefully and make sure that it's still all correct. Okay. And the word limits are a guide, so at least 250. And the reason it's set at that level is because the examiners and the people who set the exam know what's possible in 40 minutes. And so I would say if you're a good writer at band 7 and 8, you should be able to do up to about 280 words. Maybe if you're really good, 290, but if you start getting to 300 or above, then the chances are the quality of what you're writing will suffer. So unless you're a native speaker or almost native speaker, I wouldn't be going much above 280, and then you can keep control of what you're writing. Everything has to be relevant. I've seen lots and lots of students that write their exam and then they think, oh, I don't think I've got enough words, and they start adding in things, which spoils the cohesion always, and usually spoils the task response as well, because it sends you off in a wrong direction. So don't just add words for the sake of it. Also, students who add all kinds of vocabulary just because they think it will impress the examiner. But often it doesn't really make sense, or it doesn't fit with the point. So, you know, you can't do it like that. The one way to avoid this is to have a good plan. The more words you write, the more chances of mistakes, the more chances of breakdowns. So keep to that 250 to 280. This is another thing. When I worked in a college, some students would come in with 5 tasks at once, and I could guarantee that every one of those 5 would have the same mistakes. So if I were to mark those, give them back, you would learn the same from 5 as you would learn from 1. So therefore, it makes a lot more sense to do one at a time. And with my students, I always ask the students I work with, which could be you, I'm open to more students. I always ask students to send me one. I will correct it, send it back. Then you analyze that, and then you take the information and the correction and the advice, and you apply that to your next task. And that's how it works a lot better. And you should be writing these on different days, not all on the same day. It doesn't help to write lots at once. Okay, number 2, learn from mistakes. You need to know which mistakes you always make, because there will be some. And if you don't check your writing for errors, then you're not going to improve. How can you improve? And this is why, if you're looking for 7 or 8, 7.5, it's very, very difficult to do if you're not working with somebody who knows how to identify and correct your errors. So it really is important to do that. Once you know which mistakes you make all the time, and I'm pretty sure it might be articles, it could also be prepositions, it's possibly agreement, or you may have a problem with verbs, with what's past participle, past tense, that sort of thing. Have a checklist of these so that you can check these things first. So a student of mine that took the exam this week, she said in the exam, the first thing she did was to check her plurals, singular plurals. And she found 2 or 3 where she'd missed off the S. So that meant those didn't go to the examiner. So by knowing what your mistakes are, you can eliminate them before you hand in your script. When you make a mistake, make sure you know why it's wrong. Is it a grammar mistake? Is it a spelling mistake? Is it just the wrong word in the wrong place? Collocation? What kind of mistake is it? Once you understand that, then you can avoid it. If you don't keep looking at your mistakes and working out what's wrong and changing it, then your writing will just stay stuck. And that's how a lot of people end up being experts at 6.5. But don't be afraid of mistakes, because every time you make a mistake, there's an opportunity to improve. If you don't make a mistake, then you won't improve. So avoiding your mistakes, once you know what they are, reduces the number of errors you have in your writing. So therefore, it's going to be better. And it boosts your overall skills. Okay, number 3, find synonyms. So there will be words that you use a lot in writing. These are 1 or 2 that I've picked out. Children. Children it comes up in lots and lots of tasks too. You can use children. You can use a child in the singular. You can use young people. You can use offspring if it's to do with parents. You can use pupils or students if it's to do with school or any kind of school. So think about all of these different synonyms and interchange them. So if you use children, next time use something different. But don't worry about using children again later in your writing. It's the same with increase. You can use it as a verb. You can use it as a noun. Important, you can use significant, you can use vital, but you need to have alternatives for these words that come up a lot. Build up groups of synonyms that you can deploy in your writing. One of the things examiners want to see is flexibility in language, namely you can change from verb to noun to adjective, and also a wide range of different nouns and verbs and adjectives, everything. Use a thesaurus. I do this myself. If I'm writing a model and I want to use a word and I can't think of a synonym, I'll just go online and look into a thesaurus and see which one might fit well. And make sure if you look up a word in the dictionary that you know you've got the right word. English has a really huge vocabulary. So sometimes if you look it up in your own language, it might not give you exactly the right word. It may mean the same in certain contexts, but it might not be the one that you need. This is about collocation. Sometimes words cannot be used in every context. And they want to see flexibility, which is what I said before. So think about word families and noun phrases. Right, make a list of words that are really going to make an impact and only use them once in your task. So I'm thinking the one that a lot of people do in Task 1 Academic is respectively. And if you're going to use respectively to make a short list, you should only ever use it once. Because what happens, well, here are some others. So starting with ing, having weighed all the advantages and disadvantages, for example. The problem that happens if you use it more than once is that the first time the examiner will see it and say, whoa, that's really good. But if they see it again and again, they'll start to think, oh, you have a very limited range, and that will pull your band down. Passive is important. It's important for, especially for letters, formal letters. It's important for task 2 writing and for process in Task 1 Academic as well. And it stops you from using too many pronouns, which can be a bit of a problem in writing where students use lots and lots of they and these and this, and it can become very repetitive. And academic writing uses a lot of noun phrases rather than verb phrases. So if you can deploy some of these, that would be good too. Conditional sentences, not only, but also, there is actually a video I did on how to make complex sentences, and that gives you, I think, 6 different ways you can do it. And if you were to do 4 of those in your task 2, you would automatically have 4 complex sentences, but don't make every sentence complex. You shouldn't do that. Some sentences will need to be simple. So the best writing has a combination. Number 5, check out models, especially those written by teachers or examiners, rather than students. If you're going for 7, 7.5, 8, don't look at student examples particularly. Look at the teacher models, because that's what you want to emulate. And don't copy them, obviously. Look at the style. Look at some of the vocabulary. Look at the cohesion. How do they manage to relate all the sentences? How do they manage to relate the paragraphs? Pick out 1 or 2 sentences that you like and try them in your own writing. And if you can get feedback on those from your teacher, then so much the better. For charts, graphs, bar charts, look at business pages in the newspapers. They're quite short and they often have a bar chart or a line graph and an explanation, and they're perfect for the kind of writing that you want. If you're doing general training, look at real letters. How are people writing these letters? And use these as models and take some of the vocabulary or take some of the sentence structures. Yeah, don't copy them, for goodness sake. Just use them and work them into your own writing. And be bold, try new things. If you are not a week away from your exam, there is time to try new things. Get somebody to check it and they will tell you if it's good or not. And if it's good, then you can use it again and again and again, and you will know then that you have a sentence that you can write in the exam which will not have any errors. And then you just adapt that sentence type to the topic that you're doing. But don't ever try anything new in the exam. So just in your practice. And, you know, if you're happy with it, use it again. If you're not, then there are plenty of other sentences. Okay. And get feedback. Feedback's really important. I've had students who were determined to use certain words, and after about 4 or 5 times of using it, it still didn't work. So I said, just forget it and use something else. There's so much you can use. So if you're struggling with something, abandon it and find a new one, a new sentence or a new word. And this is how you develop your writing, by trying new things, then getting it right, and then using it again. Getting it wrong, trying it again. If it still doesn't work, reject it and use just the ones that you know you can write without mistakes. And then finally, there is a close connection between reading and writing. Reading will help you to improve your vocabulary. It really will. The more you read, the more vocabulary you will come across, and the more you'll be able to adopt some of that for your own writing. You also expose yourself to a lot more language. So it's good generally for being immersed in English and for getting used to English reading and writing. You'll get an idea about style and genre. So for example, if you're in general training, you'll get an idea about what's useful in an informal letter and what you shouldn't be using in a formal letter. And if you're writing task 2, you'll get a better sense of what's formal and what's maybe journalistic and what's maybe academic, so that you will start to develop the right style for your task 2. You'll also, if it's good writing, be exposed to much better grammar, so that you can then adopt sentence structures that have perfect grammar. You'll also see good cohesion in these examples. So when you read an article or you read a good blog post, you'll be able to see how everything flows really well. And some of it will be absorbed as you read, and then you can regurgitate it in your own writing. But remember, with all things, 80% is preparation and 20% is execution. So 80% of your writing should be spent on the things I've talked about today, making it better, improving it, learning new vocabulary, learning new grammar, learning new sentences, and 20% should be spent on actually doing your writing, so that when you write it down, you've got everything else in place. Okay. So that's all I have to say about writing. This does work. I work with lots of students on writing, and I've seen many, many of them get 7, 7.5, even 8. And I had, when I was an examiner, I have awarded 9s. Rarely, but I have done it. And these are all people who worked very hard and were consistent in their writing. Okay, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.